Time for another edition of the online dinner party. And of course, we're going to have interesting guests, as always, coming in and sharing their stories, their wisdom, and what's going on in their life. And all along those lines, I know a lot of people are trying to recover and are either ecstatic about the victory and the return of Donald Trump to office and everything, because I've heard conversations from both on both sides of that particular fence and all along those lines. So people are having different reactions and different thoughts about what's going on in that space and how the next 4 years will turn out. A lot of people are hopeful that no matter now that we know the results, that there'll be a movement toward unity and a movement toward change and a better nature and all along those lines. But as I've told several people, only time will tell, and we'll see what's done in terms of reaching across the aisle and in terms of bridging some of these divides, including the divides around gender and the divides around race and other kinds of divides that are out there. And I know a lot of people are still trying to figure out things around housing and around food and a number of other things, and just trying to figure out their life in general. So that's a lot of things that are going on in the world, and people are paying attention to, and all along those ways. But I've got a very interesting guest for the first guest at the dinner party, and they've done some amazing things. As some of you know, one of the shows that I do here on the network is Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. And Dean is actually a person that has worked in the correction system, but he has also battled for a number of years of his life Crohn's disease and all along those lines. So I had no idea what that particular disease was all about until having worked with Dean, and now having some other friends that have been involved in that space as well. And I know that while a lot of times we think about health in a lot of different ways, whether that's trying to get out and exercise, I know I need to do a lot more of that, and trying to stay away from those fast foods and all the bad things that we do in life, because I know that I probably depend way too much on DoorDash and way too much on these restaurants that are processed food that are near me and all along those lines. So it can be a guilty pleasure, and we can have those guilty pleasures in life and all along those lines. But a lot of times we think about our physical health, and we think about our mental health, and hopefully our spiritual health and our emotional health as well, because I know some people are even thinking about their emotional health on this particular day and all along the day after the election. Matter of fact, we just had Dr. Patmos on one of our shows talking about election fatigue. I know a lot of people are glad that those commercials are gone off the air and are feeling good. They don't have to be dealing with that, at least now, for a year or two or something like that, depending on the election cycle of your state and what's going on in your own local politics and all along those lines. But oftentimes we don't spend enough time to the brain until it becomes a necessity. I had a late friend that passed away many years ago. She had a brain aneurysm and actually died of that brain aneurysm. I think it was at a Sweet Honey in the Rock concert, and this was probably about a decade or two, but she did live a very long life and all in that space, even though she suffered that when she was in her middle ages, if I'm remembering correctly. We knew her as Makeda McKissick. Some people might have known her as Jocelyn McKissick, and all along those lines. And like I said, she is no longer here, even though I will sometimes run across her sisters and others. But I've had other friends that have dealt with various brain injuries and various terminal injuries, including some that are still dealing with that as well. And of course, even my own younger brother has recently been diagnosed within the last year or two with MS, and that ironically was the disease that was the final disease of one of our aunts, and all along those lines. As a matter of fact, the only aunt that has passed, because all of the uncles have passed. Dad is the of the mom and her three sisters. That's the only aunt that has passed, because Aunt Julie is still around, Aunt Vaughn is around, and of course Mom is still around. Now Dad is the only one of the four men that they were attached to, and all along those lines that is still around, because all of the women that are I mentioned, their significant others, my Aunt Julie and Aunt Vaughn, lost their significant others to disease or to parts of life, to the aging process, and all along those lines. But I'm gonna bring in my guest, Amira, because she's gone through a lot of things in the life and all along those lines. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, learning more about survival and how she has survived. I know that love is very important in survival, and I know that support is very important in survival. So there's other things that I know are important in survival, just in general and all along those lines. But if you want to share a little bit about your own journey, and I've got some questions, and I'm sure others that might be watching might have questions as well. But just if you'll share your own journey, because if I remember correctly, you're in the trying to remember where you were at, because at one point you were in New Mexico or Mexico, if I'm remembering correctly, and all along
Yeah.
the U.S. But share some of your own journey and some of the things that you have been dealing in your life.
Yeah, I think health is such an interesting subject because I feel like most of us feel like we're a prisoner in our bodies and not like we're driving a fun car.
Right.
Um, and I guess I spent the majority of my life feeling very imprisoned by Crohn's disease. I
Mhm.
used to be in and out of the hospital all the time, severe things going on all the time, and strong medications. And then I decided one day to do something totally different. and I just Yeah, I decided to kind of follow my joy and what felt good for me. And I went to go live in Hawaii for 10 years, but at this point I had never lived there before or even been there. I just decided to I was like, "Ah, screw it. I'll go try something different." And what I learned with, I guess, following my what made me happy is my body also became happier. and and it's been a slow process, but now I've gotten myself to the point where I am off medicine with Crohn's, which is, for how severe my case was, not a likely thing that most people achieve. But I feel really grateful now to be, it's maybe year 4 of being off medicine. And, but yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions about it. But it's
No,
been a,
a couple of questions came to my mind.
yeah.
In that space and all along those lines. One is, as I mentioned, a lot of people have been stressing because their side did not win the election. I'm not going to lie that I was one of those that my side did not win, and a lot of people have been stressing. I've been hearing people talking about moving away, kind of like doing what you're doing, and I have seen even some of our celebrities that have literally moved to other parts of the country, and I've heard people encourage people just to travel the world in general. And I can tell you that one of the things that I used to do a little bit more during the uh, probably before the pandemic and even a little bit around the time of the pandemic is there is a lake not that far from me here in Durham, and I used to enjoy walking around it just for peace of mind and all along those lines. And I don't live that far from Duke Garden, so actually I was thinking earlier today that I need to get back out to walk in those spaces just because they can be good for mental health and all along those lines. So I just wanted your take on that as one that was bold enough to try to make that move, because you're hearing now some people that are speculating because they're frustrated by what happened that they want to make that move, but you made the move for health reasons and all along those lines, and have gotten away from some of the traditional medicines. I'm thinking as well, you might be doing some of the Eastern medicine,
Yeah.
some of the other things.
Honestly, I think that so I had a brain surgery where I had less than 1% chance survival. And then when I did make it through that, I decided to, yeah, move to Maui. So for me, I was kind of lucky, I guess, because most people have to break free. It feels like, at least for me, it feels like we wrap ourselves in plastic restraints of what the world wants from us and what we want from us. And so by the time we're an adult, by the time we're like an older adult, it's like the plastic like has us. And I guess for me, and then yeah, we have to go through with a sword and just decide how we want our life to be. And that plastic to me is the fear, the doubt, the what other people want, and is this a smart decision? What about the things I'm reading online? It's just constant, like, it's influence, in my opinion. And I think what people have to go through is they have to cut through all that influence and just get themselves to have the drawing board blank in front of them and ask themselves, what is it I really want? And who do I want to be instead of who does the world want me to be? And, like, what are some things that can come up? What is the potential plastic that's going to restrain me from creating this next thing or doing this next step? And I mean, I'm all for people starting over and doing, like, I guess I would ask myself, if I didn't do it, what would that mean for me? So if I'm craving doing something completely different and then I just stop myself, I don't know that I can be proud of that version. If I can genuinely be happy with the life that I'm living, then I see no need to leave. But I think with the brain surgery, I got kind of lucky because I had forgotten what plastic existed. I forgot most of my life, most of my attachments, and I couldn't remember it. So I just said, screw it, I'll just go do this. This sounds interesting. But I know for most people, and even for me now, that plastic creeps in. It comes in and it's like, you should be more like this, maybe do more like that. And I think it's just really, I mean, that influence is not a problem, but I think it should come in and come out, and then we should still be able to be the drivers of our life. So for anyone who does want to create a new adventure or something, I'm all for it. I think that the world shows you a lot. I've traveled now for maybe the last like 12 years constantly. So at this point, my life is more about the internal adventure than the physical one. But yeah, I think both are good. Yeah, all in good seasons.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Everything. What was it like? Because I did have a friend that passed away not that long ago. It was actually a family friend, and she actually, in some ways, beat the system because she lived longer than she was expected to live because he was given a
Yeah.
diagnosis and was basically told that she had a finite amount of time to live, and she had a very positive attitude. Like it seems like you have a positive attitude, and she actually lives past what the doctors had told her that she would live. So I was just wondering, what was it like to hear that you were going to have to take a brain surgery that, as you just said earlier, only 1% of the people survive it and everything. So what was your reaction and the reaction of your loved ones when you were facing this particular brain surgery?
I think that for myself, I have a pretty rebellious soul. So I initially, when I heard the news, I was shocked, and it took me maybe a few days to decide how to move forward with that diagnosis of the surgery coming up. But even before the surgery, I was convinced that there was something to this love stuff that, and that, yeah, like I told my neurosurgeon, I was like, I'm going to go travel in a few months. I'm going to go do this. And I hadn't really traveled at that point. And he was more telling me to be realistic and he's like, the surgery's never worked, Amira. And so it's not the best idea to, imagine too far. Let's be present with what's real. But I just had this thought that maybe we create our own reality, and maybe I had so much love in my life that I thought, they're praying to like every god imaginable, and those that aren't praying to gods, they're doing energy healings. And I didn't believe in any of that stuff at that point. Now I do. But at that point, I just thought, it's all love, right? So who am I to be picky with it? Pray on my head, touch my belly, like, get tattoos. Everyone was doing something with the hope that I would get through it. And so we had this belief that if there's so much love, how could I die? And then, yeah, I think we were right. I think even 2 days before the surgery, I was like, I'm just convinced that when I do get through this, that it's like this big sign that, love heals, and love wins. And so for me, it was a really good reminder that with so much love and everyone holding one vision, like no one was around me telling me you're gonna die other than the neurosurgeon, but I didn't hang out with him so often. But yeah, I think that there's a power in holding a vision together and to hoping, imagining, visualizing everything going in a good direction. And I would say that probably, like for me, I deeply believe that had an influence.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. Now, one of the things that I know that you talk about and have been dealing with in life and everything, and has actually come up on a couple of these shows that I've done now for a few years, and all along those lines, is the notion of the imposter syndrome. I will not lie, because I brought it up on other shows as well, that when it has come to relationships, and I'm in my early 60s, and I've dated folks that are in various age ranges, from those much younger than me to those close to my own age range, and everything, that I have talked myself out of relationships. I've talked myself out of jobs and all along those lines, because a lot of times we can have that internal conversation where we find all the reasons not to pursue that which we may want to pursue, and all along those lines. So what advice would you give to folks, whether it's me or others, that are knowing that they are self-defeating themselves, but oftentimes are doing it anyway? Because I know there are big men jobs in the arts, because I'm involved in the arts world, that I probably should have applied for, but I didn't apply for, because I was having too much of a conversation with myself as to why I wouldn't get the job versus going for the job.
Mm.
Probably the same thing in relationships as well. But I just wondered, what would your advice be when so many of us are facing that inner demon and that imposter syndrome?
Mm. Oh my gosh, that is such a powerful one that I'm so passionate about. I recently became a hypnotist, and it's something that we were working on recently. A few of us that went through the program together on sabotage. I guess I used to think that we are who we are and we're stuck that way. And I guess if you're noticing, or for anyone that's noticing, I'm telling myself I have these limitations, I would just thoroughly question it. And then like get it on a drawing board in front of me of who do I want to be? And then who am I being? And do the work to break that part down, to attune yourself to be the version that you actually want to be. I think with dating, it gets really fucking tricky because people give up so easily now, and it's so heartbreaking to watch. I see it all the time. I see people leave good relationships for a misunderstanding over the need to be right, or just these minor things that, emotional wounds and triggers are going to exist in any bond. And it's unfortunate and it's not fun. It's like awful, when you're in the weeds of misunderstandings. But I think that it's not, I would go back to the drawing board of who am I deciding to be with everything. And it's something I do constantly. Like I am constantly checking myself. Like I was so terrified to do the first podcast I did because I just never spoke and I didn't feel comfortable taking up space. And so, but then I would go back to my board and I was like, what are my goals here to get over this and to feel comfortable and confident in any environment? And then in relationships too, when we want to give up or when we are, whatever it may be. I mean, for other people, some people it's just hard to just get into something because they're just so scared of what they've already seen. And it's just like, once you've dealt with enough people's shit, then, I think we all get, like, people get jaded and they're like, I actually don't want to deal with a new person's shit. And so a hint of it will be triggering and terrifying. But I think I would just go back to, like, make a note before you take a leap. This is who I want to be. I want to be confident. I want to have a loving partnership. And in a loving partnership, it comes with dealing with whoever this person is fully. Like at some point I'm going to see something I do not like. But looking at this piece of paper of what am I really wanting? I would just go back to that, because does that person while we're triggered, it's hard. When we're triggered, we just want to, not do the thing, not stretch, not move, not travel, not do anything that's out of the comfort, out of our comforts. But if we go back to some grounding piece of paper that we've decided who we want to be, and then we just hold ourselves accountable to that no matter what, That's at least my practice for myself, that I do right now, where whenever I run into that bullshit, I'm like, no, you don't get to just hide. You don't get to do the cop outs. That's not, we've already decided.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's a strong attitude to have and everything. I know because I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine, because I mentioned another friend that has been through life and has gone through some bad things in their life. They went through the judicial system and spent some time in the correctional system and all along those lines, and they have picked up some tattoos and all along those lines. And I've had some people that have said that that can be a negative, and you mentioned tattoos earlier, because they're like, would you really want a tattoo person in your life with that? Because that could be bad for the corporate image or whatever the image is, and all along those lines. So, what do you say to folks that don't give people enough room to have their sense of identity, their the personality and everything? Because I know a lot of times people will pick up an identity. I don't have any ink on me, but I think my brother does and everything. And I know that I've got friends, not just the one that I'm referring to, but others that have got ink, and I've got friends that have various hairstyles. And sometimes in the corporate world, they are discouraged from having those hairstyles, whether that's a dreads or whether that's other kinds of styles that can be out there, even dyed hairs and things along those lines. So I just wanted your take on corporate America and how it sometimes tries to put people in a box.
Yeah, I guess I feel like just human to human. I see this all the time too in like the dating world with my friends, where they get the ick so quick, or they judge someone so quickly, or yeah, like for a job, like people judge so quickly, and I think it's sad. I don't know, it's my brain surgery experience of just feeling like we're all just human. And I wish, it's something that I try to encourage my close friends, is look for the human over there, look for the fact that they're just like you, and they have their own pains, they have their own struggles, they have their own story, they have their own reasons, and that identity was built off of something. Like a lot of the times too, I have tattoos as well, and when I like sometimes I feel like when we're doing these extra things to create an identity physically, it's like we're trying to break free of something as well. So there's normally something connected to it. I think it's different for everyone, but I guess no matter what, I think it would be better to just look for the human, on the other side of, whatever the experience is, whether it's in dating, because lovers turn to, what's it called? Villains really quickly too when so I guess no matter if it's friendships, relationships, work, or family, I mean, it's so much better, I guess, to try to find compassion for whatever's going on the other side. And whether it's a different identity that we don't understand, or someone doing something different, I don't know, I would just look for how is it similar, because I think the brain tries to protect itself from, like, even the tattoo thing. My grandparents, when we started getting tattoos, because me and my sister both got tattoos, and so my grandparents in Sweden, they thought only people in jail have tattoos, so, or people who do drugs. And so they were like, are you guys in jail? Are you doing drugs? And and it's just, I think it's interesting. And she was just handing me books to paint in, because she wanted to protect me from the image that I was putting out to the world. But I think it's, even as she was doing that, I looked at her with a smile, because it's kind of cute. She's just trying to protect me. She doesn't know, it's, but yeah, I would just look for, how are we all similar? How is this person actually just like me? And whatever protectors I have going on right now, let's say this person is scary or dangerous or bad because they're different than me, I would just look for something similar. Like, look at how they smile, or, like, challenge the brain on that script. Because it's easy to get scared of everything. I mean, I've traveled, I live in Mexico right now, and if I call my family, they're quick to be like, there's this crime and that crime. I think for anyone who's been to Mexico, it's not exactly how it's painted to be on TV. It's such a loving, beautiful culture that, it's kind of funny what people are fed in their screens compared to what's real.
Yeah, along those same lines, and I'm glad you brought that up and everything. A couple things you brought up that I really wanted to get to and everything. One is we saw that a lot during the campaigns. A lot of the people were, particularly the one that won, was targeting and saying what immigration would look like. And like you said, a lot of people paint this very negative image of the criminals that are coming over from Mexico. And I'm not saying there aren't criminals that are coming over from Mexico, but from what I know, and I've known a couple of people that are of Mexican descent, having visited that area, even though I would love to visit it at some point or another because I have not done nearly enough travel and everything. But what is your take as one that has spent some time in Mexico but is of Swedish descent, just of the Mexican culture and of the Mexican people?
I think with immigration stuff, I think it is controversial subject. I mean, as far as types of people, I would say from my limited experience, and I've just spent a lot of the last few years here in Mexico, I think they're lovely. I think that it's such a passionate culture to be around. Something I really deeply love is walking down the street and seeing couples hold hands and seeing people just make out and show love, and just how warm and friendly people are, how much they give. Like when you go over to someone's house here, they're just so generous. So from my perspective, people in Mexico are incredible and really sweet. I haven't run into any dangerous people, so I can't really speak to that. But
it sounds like you're hanging out with good folks, and that's a good thing to do, no matter where you're at and everything along those lines. I know, and I've always been a believer. I've always been a believer in this, that there is people that have most men have both male and female energy, and all along those lines, just like a lot of females have both. Well, most all females have male and female energy, because I think that we all have those kind of ebb and flows and both energies in our body, no matter what your gender is and everything. But I know that one of the things that you seem to be very proud of, and I saw that even in some of the things on your bio and everything on Matchmaker and everything, is this the Matchmaker podcasters and all along those lines, is this notion of celebrating the feminine. And we just had a woman that tried to run for president here in the United States, and some people are thinking that society as a whole, and particularly American society, was not ready to elect a woman, and there's still some people and some cultures that can be machismo, and I just know that for a fact and everything. But I just wanted your take on the feminine and the masculine energy that we all have.
Yeah, I think it's powerful to have both energies inside of us and to learn when with each side is useful. For me in relationships, I've found that when I bring my masculine energy, it doesn't quite work so well. It ends up, it throws off the balance. So for me in relationships, I think it's way more powerful for me to be in my feminine and to be connected. And to me, that means vulnerable, vulnerable, open, receptive, connected. And I think that there's some misconception in seeing that as weak, but I actually think it's so powerful to be vulnerable and to just be able to sit with it and to not let the energy get so crazy, but just to just sit with how we actually feel. And so that's my practice in the feminine area. For masculine energy, I think it's in business. I have my own businesses, and with that, it needs to have some masculine energy. I can't just, sit and flow. It will not go anywhere. So I guess the magic, I think, is in being able to turn it on and off. I don't have, I don't have an opinion on the if we were to have a woman president or anything. I personally, as a woman, would not want to run for president. So I don't know. I mean, we're all wired so differently, but for my energy, I can't even imagine desiring that. I would way rather keep my
That makes a
life like a lot more feminine. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely curious to hear about the entrepreneurship, and I'm going to bring in a couple of our other guests. And I know we've got
Yeah.
about full time for the show and everything. I know you've got some limited time, but I definitely appreciate you being on. And I'm bringing on Miss Karen and hear what she's got going on, because she is all about art as self therapy and all along those lines. So art is very important, and I definitely want to hear more about this notion of art as therapy. And I know that even now, as I was just telling Amir, there are a lot of people that are trying to figure out how they're going to cope with the stress of what they've gone through in the elections and all along those lines. So I just wanted your take on art as therapy, and in a little bit I'll also bring in Dr. Sandra as well, who is a fellow entrepreneur as well. But definitely, if you'll share a little bit about your story, and we'll continue this dialogue. And I've got one other gentleman that will be joining us also as well. But definitely, if you'll just share a little about your journey, because that's what the online dinner party is. I grab different guests from different sources, and we just get together and kind of have heartfelt conversations and learn from each other. That's kind of the way I think of this show is, and everything along those lines. So share a little bit about yourself, Karen, and what you're all about.
Hi, nice to meet you. And hi, Amira. You're so beautiful. I'm an artist and a painter and art teacher. You photograph so beautifully. I don't know if you've done any acting, but I know the camera loves you. You have a great expressive face. It's beautiful cheekbones. So congratulations. Yeah. So I've been involved in creativity all my life. My father was an Irish storyteller on vaudeville way back in the day before he joined the Marine Corps, but he always had stories to tell. And I think that heritage took over in my life. I was a little girl in the backyard doing plays in the playground during kindergarten, actually making everybody actors. I was always directing. So believe it or not, it took me all the way to my 50s to go to film school, to finally start finding out how to be a filmmaker. Because even then, when I went in 2007 through 10, it was on the cusp of the digital revolution for filmmaking, going from literal film into DSLRs and using digital equipment. And the old schoolers were like, no, it'll never be as good. And I'm like, yes, I know it will be. And it makes it so much easier. And here we all have these handheld cameras, video capabilities, and it's just revolutionized the whole world of videography. And I got to go to Uganda 2 years ago and meet a group of rescued street kids that this church has taken literally from things we don't even want to talk about. We talk about trauma of the elections. My husband and I run a poll, so I can tell you some stories. But the point I was making is these kids have stories to tell, and I was working with them, and they want to do movies. So thanks to the internet, I've been working with them for 2 years. We've already produced 2 films, and we're working on a script for our 3rd film. So we got to get these stories out, the world to hear people's stories and what we've been through, that we have so much more in common than we have not in common. We have the same desires ultimately inside of our hearts, to love and be loved, to have families, to be part of something that has purpose and meaning and a legacy that will last. At my age, in my 70s, you really think about those things. What is going to be here for my children, grandchildren, and the next generations? Can I help make the world a better place? So these are all my thoughts, as I've found out through the years as an art teacher, how art does heal. I started investigating and really looking at the research and what does science say? What is going on in our brains when we do these arts, whether it's, the visual arts, the fine arts, the performing arts, music, dance, all of these different ways that we have, thinking, wow, you know what? We're all creatives. we've got this fantastic right brain that's wired for creativity, all of us. And unfortunately, we don't utilize it enough. Unlike you, Mark, who are using it all the time with your podcasting, building your left brain, right brain neuro connections to keep you brilliant no matter what age. I'm on this mission to stir that up and have people operating in their full potential. So I know that was a long
No, that's
speech.
okay. I appreciate that. Everything. I also brought in Dr. Sandra, and Dr. Sandra has got this whole notion of shift and being part of our purpose and all along those lines. So definitely, it sounds like you're right up that alley and everything, because she even has an interesting term which I had never heard before. So I definitely wanted to hear Dr. Sandra explain what a shiftologist is, because definitely it's a new word that we've got out there. So she's calling herself a shiftologist and talks about the journey to purpose and all along those lines. So looking forward to hearing more about that, Dr. Sandra. So if you can share with us what the shiftologist is and how people can get more with their purpose.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Mark, for the invite. Shiftologist is because I'm a coach. I'm a life coach, and so I help shift people from the place they are right now to the place where they want to go. A lot of people are stuck. They're going through depression and, first one thing and another. And like divorce, cancer, just various struggles in life. And they feel like they're stuck. I am that person that you would go to shift you, to get you out of that seemingly bottomless pit and let you know that there are choices and there is another way. And so that's what it means. But I am also an author of several books, and my website is journeyintopurposellc.com/store, and you will be able to see all of my work that God has given me to do. I also collaborate with a lot of women, and we do collaborations. Right now, I'm working on a collaboration with a few women, and if anyone wants to, I need a few men and two more women. It's a few things my mother forgot to tell me before she died. So if you fit that category, I welcome you on this collaboration. I'm also writing another book, and it's called Thoughts, 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 Thoughts. We think thoughts every day. And I just want to pique the interest of men and women to see how many thoughts you think in a day. Are they negative? Are they positive? Where are you going with your thoughts? Do you have any goals set? Various things like that. I also am a host of a show, and I welcome you all to join my show, Sandra's Authors Forum Talk Show. I have interviewed Les Brown, a lot of people I've interviewed, and I would love for you to be the next person as well. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Sounds great, and I love that and everything. One thing that I'm hearing, and I definitely want to get to M. Oliver as well and everything, but before I get to M. Oliver, and then I'll get to him as well, it seems like one of the themes that I'm hearing through a lot of this conversation is a notion of resilience and everything along those lines, because I'm hearing
Exactly.
that definitely Amira has had to fight through a number of things, including Crohn's disease and a surgery that people thought she only had a 1% chance of survival with the brain and all along those lines, and even Karen deciding that she wanted to be a filmmaker at what some people would consider the middle part of our life and all along those lines, because I'm in my early 60s and all in that space. But definitely it sounds like we've got that whole notion of resilience and the importance of resilience and all along those lines. So I'm just wondering, before I get to M. Oliver, if the three ladies have any thoughts about how important resilience is to them. Because if I can just add some more context to that and everything, the other thing that I heard that was very interesting is a lot of times we get stuck on this notion of you got to have certain things in life. I think you even kind of mentioned that, Amira, and everything when we first started the show, that you got to have the right car, and I don't even drive and everything. You got to have the right house or the right spouse or the right whatever. And sometimes I think that we stop ourselves in our tracks because we quote unquote don't have the right thing, or we don't think that we have the right thing, and we start following the Joneses and all along those lines and everything. And I'm thinking, would we have had what would it have been like if Karen had decided that she didn't want to do the films or let things stopper like age and things along those lines, or even if I think Amira, that you're probably the youngest among us here in your 30s and all those lines, but you had decided that you didn't want to be an entrepreneur because you don't have, my understanding, I don't think a lot of times, and not saying all entrepreneurs, but a lot of entrepreneurs do have a college background.
Yeah, I didn't even finish high school.
What?
But I think something I wanted to say about that resilience is what I find that the world is looking for constantly is perfect in themselves, perfect in others, perfect job, perfect car, perfect this, perfect that. And I think when you build and cultivate that internal resilience, it makes you so much more capable to be grounded and to look the world in the eyes for what it is, and to look yourself in the eyes for who you really are. Because it's hard to see ourselves when we see, the stuff that we're not so proud of. That's imperfect. But I think when we cultivate, and I think it should be the most important mission, should be taught in schools, to cultivate that internal feeling that we can handle life, and we can handle what comes up to us. We can handle imperfection inside ourselves and in others. And Karen, there was something I wanted to say, because earlier I was journaling and you said you're starting at 50 and you're already creating all this cool, awesome stuff. But there was this thing that because I felt that way, and I'm 32. I was like, I'm starting this thing, just became a hypnotist. And it's just, as I'm building, I'm like, who am I? But I realized, start now, start at 40, start at 50, start at 60, start at 6 p.m., start on a Sunday night, start in the morning, just start. And I, while you were talking, Karen, it just like flickered in front of my face again. And I just had to say it. And I think it's amazing that you're doing that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I have many kids older than you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, Oliver, just really quickly share a little bit about your own background and all along those lines, and we'll learn more about you as well, because that's what the Online Dinner Party is. We share our life stories and learn from each other, and the positive things that we can learn from each other. So share a little bit about yourself as well. Mr. Oliver, can you hear me? Mankando? I don't know, he might be frozen.
Yeah.
So I'll try to talk to him outside and see if we can't go. Hold on a second, he might be back. Can you hear me now? No, he's still out. So I'll talk to him outside. And
can you?
Oh, I'm sorry. You can't hear me? Go ahead. Go ahead. Mankando? I don't know if he can hear me. He might. Well, he'll jump in if he can. If the mic starts working.
Yes. Basically, for me, before to. Yeah, I was saying that before 2016, my health was pretty bad. I was able to change my lifestyle and adopt plant-based nutrition. And I wanted now to share my knowledge and my passion with the world. And that's why I became a speaker and an author and a weight loss and wellness coach. And I've been doing that since 2016. And that's why I've been doing, to help really people to be able to lose weight and reclaim their health. So that's what I've been doing for all these years.
Appreciate that and everything. Along those same lines, Amira, because I'd actually raised something that I know a lot of people have been thinking about it, and you and even Dr. Sandra and even Karen kind of mentioned it and everything. Do you think that we are, and kind of what the reason the network was formed, my understanding from talking to both Nick Palveda and Cam Calhoun, is that they felt that certain things were not being taught in school, including health education and including things that are fiscal literacy, because they're very big on fiscal literacy and all along those lines and all in that space and everything. So I'm just wondering, how do you feel that the U.S. in general is doing, but the world specifically in the U.S. in general are doing in terms of education? Because like I said, I got the impression that was part of the reason that Nick and Kim formed this particular network, Pod TV, and everything gave me this platform to have the Online Dinner Party and all along those lines. But how do you feel we're doing in the sense of teaching basic skills and all along those lines?
I think really bad. I grew up in Sweden, so my my earlier years, we would learn more home ec, survival skills, woodworking, multiple languages, and then I moved when I was in 6th grade and joined the American schooling system, and I think it's ridiculous what we learn there compared to what we actually need in life. I think communication should be taught in school, like how to communicate with in a healthy way. I think survival skills should be taught, in school, how to plant things and grow things and cook things. Like, I think there should be more focus on what's actually really useful for life, because all those years of math and now we just use calculators. I don't know. Yeah, so I guess from my opinion, I would say that there's a lot of missing things. I think with such a divide in the world where, people are so eager to get divided nowadays over COVID, over elections, over vaccines or not, there's constant, I think people are just really eager to see differences in each other. And I think in schooling, there could be something that set us up for more of a community like way of looking at the world and having more compassion for different opinions and for different people.
But I agree with you. Coming from an artist point of view, artist acting, it's very obvious to me. My whole family is very, very, very right brain. And as I've studied and learned more about the right brain that we all have in schools, especially in the West, it's trivialized. And if there's any budget cuts, the acting classes, the music classes, the art classes are going to be cut. So we've got a generation really focused on left brain, logic and order, and taking SAT tests and memorization and timeliness, which is nothing wrong with that. It's good. We want those skills, but it's completely ignoring the other half of our brain, which is wired for intuition and imagination and all those wonderful creative ideas. And when we use them together, we build these neural pathways that make us our most brilliant. So this is what has set me on this quest these last few years about art as self-therapy, wellness through creativity, because when we do that, we get over brain fog and brain fatigue and depression and all of these very, very painful things emotionally, mentally, even the paralysis of perfectionism. You take that perfectionism you were talking about, Amira, and you make a life where you can't do anything because you're so afraid you'll make a mistake. It just paralyzes. Even as we get older, to get over that is huge. As Dr. Sandra was talking about our thoughts, I read where 80% of our thoughts are negative. I mean, I don't know if you've heard that statistic as well, but can you imagine if 80% of your thoughts are negative? What kind of life are you living?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, Dr. Sandy, what's your take on that? Because I have heard that a lot of people are walking around with negative thoughts, but I've also heard, kind of to your purpose, your notion of purpose. One of the things, I had a good friend who used to be on this network and everything, and they're very much into the metaverse and some of that kind of space. And they used to talk about how they felt that a lot of us are, and I hate to put it because it's going to kind of bring a pop culture reference, but are, in Nicole's words, walking zombies, and are kind of like just going through the motion and all along those lines, and not actually trying to engage the world and everything. Even to kind of what Karen was talking about, I sometimes get some pushback because I am proud of my identity, and I'm a light-skinned African American and all along those lines, but I do have some relatives and part of my family that are Native American and actually very involved in the powwow circuit, and of course, because of slavery, some European American background as well, so definitely some mix, but the majority of the identity is African American and light-skinned African American and all in that space. But I sometimes get pushback when I bring that up because some people are afraid of what they call identity politics or wokeism or a number of other things. Whereas one of the things that y'all don't know, because y'all just met me on the online dinner party, even though it's my show and everything, is that I am a historian at a cultural arts center here in Durham and everything, in addition to being a event planner and all along those lines. And one of the things that I like to say that I do when I do my history presentations is I point to a stained glass at the church that the Hayti used to be, because the Hayti is a cultural arts center that was an old converted a church that was converted to that Cultural Arts Center, is the stained glass of Mr. Duke, one of the founders of Washington Duke, who actually has a bigger stained glass than the two stained glasses, it might be three, of Jesus Christ. So I point to how vanity, even the vanity that we're seeing now, existed even back in that period. So I believe in talking about the history, as I like to call it, warts and all. And I sometimes think that you get some pushback if you try to bring up the negative aspects of history and everything. But I just wanted your take, because I have no problem with people wanting to talk about Harriet Tubman or even what some people call critical race theory and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on, are we teaching enough of our history, both the good and the bad?
I really think we focus on the bad more than the good. And I think it's really necessary for us to dive deep into finding out what they're not teaching us.
Right.
I think, a lot of people blame the schools for not teaching, or my children can't write cursive because the schools no longer teach it. I am the mother of 9 children, and I taught all of my children how to read fluently before they started school. I taught them how to write. I think it's the parents' obligation to do the majority of the work. I think when you send your child off to school, you as a parent are sending a capable child to the school, ready to learn. All right. And I think that's where we have an imbalance in the schooling. It's because we think the teacher's job is to teach our children at least 88% of what they're supposed to know. I beg to differ. I think it's the opposite. And so I think if we did our homework at home as parents and instilled in our children the morals and the principles of what we want them to know about the truths of life, then it will make it easy for the teachers to teach them what they are trying to teach them. The curriculum at the school can't be taught because our children haven't been taught at home how to respect the teacher and to learn, and that you're going to learn and not to play. And not to get friends. That's what my parents taught me. When you go to school, you're not going to get a friend. You're going to get an education. And so I think it's totally off balance. But I think we should teach religion in the right aspect. But then how can we do it when the religious people are not sticking to it? You know what I'm saying? So I think we should teach a well-balanced curriculum in the school, but I think parents and teachers and the powers that be should get together and find out what that would look like.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Along those same lines, because I have no kids of my own, but I do have 2 nephews. They just turned 15 and 16 back in August of this year, and everything, because my brother was a late life dad and everything, because he literally just turned 55 last month back in October, and all along those lines. But when they were first infants and first little people, I remember that my dad literally was walking them around and showing them kind of what you were talking about, a mirror, the wonders of nature and all along those lines. And sometimes people were I don't say critical, because I don't know that they were, but there were probably some people that were thinking that might be too early to be learning about nature. I actually thought that was a great thing that Dad did by showing them trees and the butterflies and everything along those lines, even at an age that they may not have been comprehending it as much as they do now as teenagers and all in that space. But I just wondered if you think that we are teaching enough about our connection to the rest of the world. And by that, I mean also not just other cultures, but also Mother Nature and everything. So I'll say to you, Amira, but if other people want to jump in as well.
I think that it's amazing to teach that really early on. Something I moved to Hawaii, so I got to experience how Hawaiians do it, and it is powerful to see little kids correcting adults about littering because they're protecting the island, and the island is a part of us. And it was like the first few times I watched this process of seeing kids really value, because that's what's been taught to them, really value nature and respect it, and build a relationship with it. This little boy was like 5 years old, and he's like, "Hey, sir, we're not supposed to throw these. It's bad for the island." And I just thought it was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. and so actually like deeply correct. So from my perspective, I think yes, teaching kids about nature is powerful. I know that many people also live in cities and there's not so much nature, and so it might be easy to be a little bit more disconnected. And but yeah, from my perspective, I think it's super powerful to teach that relationship, because I don't know, for my journey it's been beautiful to learn and to appreciate nature too. I was such a picky kid when I was younger. I was like, I won't eat anything with onions or bananas or this or that. And then I lived off the land for a year in Hawaii, and I would eat whatever was growing in the garden because that's what we had. And I think that that's the real relationship we should have with food. I mean, allergies are real and stuff, but preferences, I think we've gotten picky and we've gotten ungrateful. And when we're in those shoes where we are living off the land, then which is, just eating whatever is growing on the property, and then you have a different relationship to it, and you're just grateful that it existed. You walk outside and the pineapple's ripe or an avocado dropped, and you're just like, yes. Instead of, oh no, this avocado is imperfect, or it's just different. So yeah, from my perspective, I think building a relationship to nature and to food and to learning how to grow it ourselves, I think it's an important value for me, at least.
That makes a lot of sense. Hey, Sandra, along those same kind of lines, one of the things that you mentioned is you've got 9 children, and all along those lines, and there have been times that people have tried to stereotype
So cool.
African Americans and all along that line as being the ones that are leading the welfare movement, even though the actual face of welfare is usually a white blonde woman, and all in that space, if we're being perfectly honest, and all along those lines. But I'm just wondering, as a mother of 9, or the mother of these multiple kids, and I imagine that they're both boys and girls and everything, what is your take about the social media aspect about what's going on? Because one of the things that frustrates me is I mentioned that I eat out way too much. Probably will eat out later on today and everything, and not all the time, but sometimes when you go into a restaurant, you sometimes see the kids more engaged with their devices and the parents more engaged with their devices than they're actually engaged with each other. So I just wanted your take on that, because I sometimes get frustrated when I see that, and also if you call them on that, then you can wind up getting into a verbal argument, because a lot of people are going to be like, what are you doing trying to call my kids? It's kind of like, even if you call them on the baggy pants and things along those lines, a lot of people are afraid to bring it because they don't want the consequences of that from the parents and everything. But I just wanted your take on communications and the social media kind of phenomenon that we're in the middle of now.
Oh boy, we are in a battle, aren't we? I was reading, children's device is like ownership. They take it personal. Just like we appreciate our vehicles or our home, or whatever is important to us, children, they only have that little device and they take it serious. And so my take on communication is one-on-one. When you're at the dinner table, then you're socializing with your family, your friends, you're engaged in conversation. Playtime is playtime, but dinner time is dinner time. And there is a time and a place for everything. And so that's how I raise my children. And of course, we had a battle at first because they're attached to that device. Their phone is their everything. That's the only possession they feel like they have. And so when I would punish my child and take the phone away, they took that very seriously. And, I had to communicate on a level that they understood. And then I tried to do what I heard a parent do and take the phone at night, put it on top of the refrigerator. Oh, they weren't having that. So I think parents have to be wise with starting rules in the beginning, because if you start them in the beginning, it will be less difficult to enforce them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It can, along those same lines and everything. One of the things that during the pandemic I was very much involved with was I reconnected with IPC, who is on Instagram and is on Clubhouse and a number of other places. But he was part of George Lucas's family, and he came up with this group called the Funky Eye Puppets, and I did some of the voiceover for that work and all along those lines, because we were trying to find different things to do that were entertaining during the time that we were all locked up. I was even involved with the Daybreakers, which is the dance movement, and all along those lines. But one thing that I remember that IPC used to talk about is how, as we became more adults, we got away from play, and we sometimes feared play, and all along those lines. So I just wondering, as an art teacher, is that something that we've got to do a better job of? Because I sometimes think that we are afraid, even in relationships, to engage in play, even though in my mind, play is just as important as communications in a solid and good relationship and all in that space. But I sometimes wonder if we are afraid that we're acting too childish if we let ourselves get into the play moment and everything. So I was wondering your take on that, Karen.
Absolutely. Even Albert Einstein, considered one of the great creative geniuses of the 20th century, said creativity is intelligence having fun. And I think, especially in my generation, the cares of this world and the hardships and the traumas really can weigh people down and get too serious. Especially, my husband and I are ministers, so we, in the body of Christ, it's very easy to get weighed down with that kind of heaviness. And we lead a group called Imagine Gatherings, and so we're the artists, musicians, singers, dancers, poets, and we just have fun. We eat, we fellowship, and then we worship, and we just let it loose. Whatever goes, and no control, just letting Holy Spirit have it. And it adds that life spark. I think you're right, Mark. Without it, we're a bunch of dredges, or as you were talking about zombies. We're not going through life living and loving and being light and salt to this world. And so it's absolutely true. When we take out the arts, when we take out those beautiful right brain activities, we take out a lot of fun and imagination. And they said that statistically, 5 and 6 year olds, 98% are creative geniuses. Wow. But only 2% of adults. So what happens in those couple of decades? And it's the things that we're talking about here of suppressing that joy, keeping children from really exploring and developing and stirring up their creative gifts and letting them have a chance. We homeschooled we only had 4, but it was still a house full. We usually had extra ones, and we homeschooled them because of some of the very reasons Dr. Sanders talking about, with really getting to spend the time with your children. When you have ADHD children or any kind of issues, mental, that they don't sit and be quiet very well in their 7 hours of schooling. I have one child that could have made it through school fine, but we just kept them home and did the things that really felt right, besides what they had to do. We just tried to develop their own particular bents and gifts. You spend a lot more time outside when you have a lot of boys.
That makes a lot of sense and everything along those lines. Along that same kind of line, because one of the other, like you said, I've worked for a couple and still work for multiple companies, including my own, and of course Pod TV, and I've mentioned before, Hey Top. But one of the other ones that I've worked for and still work for when it is season, and it's ironic because I'm not a fan of it and everything along those lines, is I work with Measurement Incorporated, which is one of the largest standardized testing companies in the country, or one of the top ones, and all in that space. But I sometimes wonder, are we too busy teaching to the test? And I just wanted y'all's take on that, because even though I work for a company that does the testing, I sometimes am frustrated. But sometimes you got to do jobs that you need in order to pay the bills, because I am one of those people that differentiate between jobs and careers and everything. So some of the things that I do, like the arts and this Pod TV work, is everything I consider more of a career. There's other jobs that I've had to take that have been to pay the bills and help pay the bills, and those are things like measurement and everything. But I just wondered, do you feel that we sometimes gear, particularly our teachers, too much toward the test and getting them to understand what the quote unquote right answer is? Anybody that wants to take that?
Well, you're obviously very right, I think. I think we have to see those changes happen if we want our children to have the kind of experiences that Dr. Sandra's talking about, the way that she's raised her children, incorporating those things, even the way Amir is talking about the way she got to be raised with learning survival skills, learning cooking. I know I resisted that. I admit it when I was in high school. I'm not going to be a housewife. I'm not taking typing. I'm not going to be a secretary. Man, did I shoot myself in the foot. I had to learn how to do that in graduate school, how to type so I could type my thesis. It was, I made it a hard way. And of course I ended up being home with children and needing to cook. Then I found out, gosh, cooking can be very creative too. So we incorporated that part of our curriculum. All the children learned how to cook. All my sons had to learn how to cook too. That's part of survival, right?
Cooking is definitely part of survival. It can definitely be part of that survival skill, because one of the things that my only brother has, because I've only got just me and him in terms of the kids that my parents had and all along those lines. But I think he got the better end of the deal, even though he might disagree, because I have always been an avid reader and avid learner and everything. And at some point, he realized that there was this book up on the kitchen cabinet called a cookbook. So he kind of like crawled up onto the oven, got the cookbook, handed it to me, and asked me to read him the instructions. So he managed to fix some dishes while I was sitting there reading it to him and everything. And he is still a good cook of him and his fiance. He's been married a couple of times, but like I said, he might have got the better end of the deal, even though I continue being a researcher and all along those lines. But definitely he is a good cook then, and is still a good cook. You and Karen and Dr. Sanders brought up something that I sometimes get frustrated by it. I'm not knocking organized institutions, including organized religion and everything, but sometimes I wonder if we don't get caught up in dogma and all along those lines, and too much in dogma. Because one of the things that I remember as a youngster, there was a very powerful documentary. It might have been Ted Koppel. It could have been one of the other great journalists of the day. It could have even been Mike Wallace, but they did a special and they looked at the world religions. They looked at everything, because me and Amir, before y'all came on, we're talking about some of the Eastern philosophies, but they looked at everything from Eastern philosophies to Christianity to Islam to a number of other religions. And the impression that I got, and actually ironically, is my dad that got me and I think my younger brother to come and watch this movie or TV series with him, is that a lot of the religions are basically have at their heart the same core principles. There might be extremes in all of these religions, but they have the same core principles, which is love the Most High, whatever they want to define as the Most High, love your neighbor, respect Mother Nature, be kind to others, and all along those lines, and be kind to your people that brought you into the world, your parents and things like that. So they seem like a lot of them had the same core values, but then we use it as a dividing factor. But I just wondering y'all's take on that and everything. I guess I'll start with you, Mira, but I'd love to hear from the two women, because I think they're ministers as well. But your thoughts around that, because we sometimes, to me, it becomes a divisive force.
Yeah, I think that it was, I don't know, I guess I see religion as something that has really helped people live in a certain way, and then have certain values, and then have a sense of community. And so I think that the intention behind the structure is really good. I think right now it seems like, yeah, I guess I constantly feel like people are looking for differences. And I even have friends and family members that are in relationships where, based on religious things, they have to, not reveal who their partner is, or they don't have the blessings of those structures or those religions to stay in love, which I think is wild. But I guess from my perspective, I think that it's beautiful to have a sense of connection to God or to whatever you believe in, and to share that with other people is amazing. But I guess looking across to other constructs of religion, I would encourage people to look at it with, how are we similar? And how are we similar? What are the similar values here? For me, I've never been very religious, but I always enjoy being a part of whatever anyone's got going on. I've had close friends that are Jewish, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, and spiritual angel channels that are, talking to different beings on different planets. And honestly, I don't know the limits of what exists, but I do know that I enjoy being around people who have a strong connection to something, and I don't feel called to any of it. I think the most interesting group I was a part of was a kirtan group where they were just singing the whole time, and that was their expression of communicating with God. And I was like, wow, this is beautiful. But yeah, I guess looking beyond the boundaries of how religions are different, I would just encourage people to look at how they're actually the same and how people want the same thing. And yeah, and that it's not really worth it to take the differences so serious.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's your take on that, Karen and Sandra and everything? I'll start with you, Karen, because you mentioned the singing group, and I'm thinking that there are probably times that you have reached out to different kinds of organizations and maybe even different religious groups, even though y'all are Christian by nature and everything. But I'm thinking in your community, you might have even reached out to some of the other religions, even in doing joint services or joint efforts.
Yeah, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. My father, when he married a Lutheran, was excommunicated from his Irish Catholic family. They, except for his parents, everybody else rejected my mom and everybody. So they didn't, he kind of threw God out with the religion. And I think it's easy to confuse that relationship with the Heavenly Father, our Heavenly Father, with religion. Religion is almost like our way to reach Him when He's like, oh, okay, I can't. I made a way to reach you, and that's what I came to faith. Had a Christian roommate in college that prayed for me for years, and I didn't even know I got saved when I read the 4 spiritual laws, and I said, this makes a lot of sense. I prayed it and went to sleep and didn't know I'd become a Christian, but until years later, it sent me on a search. Just like you're talking about, Amira, where I really wanted to know the truth, and I didn't know it. I even joined the Mormon Church for 2 years. I didn't know it was a cult, at the time. It was on that search, and when I got out of it, and then it was at my first Bible study, learning the Book of Revelation. This is a long time ago, and Late Great Planet Earth, and all of these things, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and someone said, when did you get saved? And I mean, just that quick, I had a vision of myself in that dorm room bed reading the 4 spiritual laws. After that, I did the most sinning of my life. I did, went all these awful different ways, but I just really trust in the love and mercy and the grace of God. He, and as an artist, he gave us all 10 different fingerprints. He went to a lot of trouble to make us different. Even as you're talking about, we have the same inner desires and heart. On the outside, he went to a lot of trouble to make us different. So I have no clue why people want to be the same. I don't understand when teenagers want to wear the same things. My mom made our clothes. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I didn't know it was because we were poor. I just knew that she was very creative. I never felt that lack because I liked being different, and I liked, my mom encouraging that. And so, religion for me is kind of a tricky thing where my husband and I were ordained outside the denominations. I agree. I think denominations just divide. I don't think that they, I don't have an identity of what these denominations are. I love my relationship with God and Jesus Christ and Holy Spirit, that defines me. It is absolutely the core root of who I am as a believer. We don't even like to say hardly we're Christians because of the religious implications. We say we're believers. We believe in God. We trust our prayers are heard by someone bigger and beyond. Because I know, even though I was taught not to believe in God, my father was an atheist up until the end of his life. I was taught to believe only in myself and what I could do. But inside there was that, I will never be enough. I know that I am not enough. I just knew it. And not just in that I'm not perfect place, but in that sense that I want someone bigger and better and stronger that I can lean on and depend on, and whose lap I can sit on and cry. My parents divorced. And as a military kid, our family was it. Now my family's in 3 different states. And I was the oldest, and my youngest brother was 9. I didn't see him for years. It was just this big explosion. And at that time is when, finding God and start believing in angels, believing in help, believing that there is something more than what we can see with our eyes, was not just a comfort, but life-changing rock that I've established the rest of my life on. And in 50 years, I promise he's never failed. He's never left. He's never disappointed. He's worth everything to me. He forgives. He honors. He loves every person. When you realize that, then these differences just don't make a hill of beans. It's like, why do we focus? Like you said, why are we focusing on these negative thoughts? Just like Dr. Sandra's talking about, why are we focused on the things that are wrong instead of focusing on the things that are beautiful and wonderful and true and full of glory and wonder? You just look around. How do you look at this sunset and not say, wow, somebody made that beautiful? How can you not know there's more than we can put our fingers on? So I'm full of the wonder of the beauty of the world and of people. I think people are amazing. I just, I look at you, everybody in this room is younger than me, and you just got these amazing stories. I know, Oliver, you've been overwhelmed by all of us women talking. So I feel like we haven't given you a chance to talk, but there's my opinion. Thank you, Mark, for giving me a chance to put my little preacher platform on.
No problem. Glad to have you do that and everything along those lines. Oliver, if you want to jump into conversation, please do. And all along those lines and everything. The other thing I was going to just say really quickly, and anybody, including Oliver, that wants to jump into it, is I am also a big fan of our connection to the past. I'm not saying that we have to live in the past, but I am a big fan of our connection to the past, because I know that there are some people call them ancestors, because I don't think that they're always family ancestors. I think that they can be ancestors that are in your friend circle as well. Because as far as I'm concerned, Baba Chuck Davis is a world famous dancer, or was a world famous dancer, and everything like that. And he passed about 7 years ago, but he is still an ancestor, even though we're not of the same bloodline. And then there are others that are of my bloodline that I am very much connected to as well. So definitely I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts, because I know a lot of people are trying to be connected as much as they can. Like I said, I come from a family of folks that have achieved a lot, including my parents that are still living. My dad is a well-known local artist, and my mother was a creator of a rural radio station with Dad and everything that was not connected to the universities. And Dad's mother was the creator of the first African-American library in Raleigh, North Carolina, our state capital, and all along those lines. And her husband was actually involved in biology, and the biology building is named after him. So I know that their roots, and even on my mom's side, they were rural people, farmers and things like that. The things that they taught to their folks that then were passed on to me kind of are part of my imprint. So I think that the ancestors we have, whether they're ancestors that we know or other ancestors that we are connected to non-family lines, it is very important. That's just my opinion. Just really quickly, Amir, because I know you said you had to bounce off and everything very shortly, and we'll go for another few minutes with the guests that we've got, and we still got some time for the show, but you were the first guest and everything. One thing that I get all my guests to do is, if there is a podcast or a book that you want to share of yours and everything, this is the time to do that. And I get all my guests and everybody that's on here, hopefully including Oliver will get it as well, is I give them an opportunity to share their message of positivity. That's kind of like my own ministry, for lack of a better term, that I try to do on all of these shows. So if you have a message of positivity that you would like to share and everything, and I do hope that you'll make a return trip, and I'll probably saying the same thing to everybody else as well, but definitely hopefully you'll make a return trip on another show and everything. But anything
I'd love to.
You would like to share.
Thank you so much, Mark. My message would be dream bigger. I was once a waitress at Red Robin, and my biggest dream was to become a cool bartender. And I have built multiple businesses. I own an adventure company on Maui called Epic Maui Hikes, and I do warrior retreats to help people build resilience, confronting activities like ice baths and hot challenges and all this stuff to find that power inside. And then I most recently became a hypnotist, and I use it for manifestation purposes. So helping people deeply change their internal environment to accept more. So yeah, my message would be dream bigger. And if anyone wants to find me, Instagram is probably best, Traveler of Love. But yeah, it's been such a pleasure. So nice to meet all of you.
It's been a pleasure having you on as well. Before you totally leave and everything along those lines, you just kind of mentioned it really quickly, but Kobe Bryant talked about that as well. So just really quickly for folks that are watching, what to you is a warrior mentality? Because sometimes people try to associate that with
sometimes it's like this very tough thing. For me, warrior energy is internal. It is silent. It's peaceful. It's just a knowing of how much we actually can do. There's something that happens when we sit through an ice bath in the first 30 seconds or a minute. It's our body thinks it's dying, and so it's just I gotta get out, and then something changes. There's just this resilient energy, knowing, like a deep knowing that I actually can do this. I can handle this. I can handle more. And so with the retreats, when we do temescals, it's the same thing. It's smoky and it's hot, and your body feels like it's dying. And so we do a lot of those activities with cliff jumping as well, things that feel so deeply terrifying. And in doing those activities, it kind of it changes how we look at fear. When you've done that for 5 days straight of just facing all kinds of fears, we do emotional confronting games too. One is where we walk around and we tell people to put their hands on somebody that they think would be a good mom, or somebody that intimidates them, or somebody and so when people get the hands on their shoulder and it's a question that's not positive, that's also deeply confronting, but it's really cool to move through that stuff as a community. So for me, resilience is not, I'm the shit. I think that comes from a lot of insecurity. I think that a deep knowing where it's, for me, the warrior mentality is this inner smirk at life. Like, I can handle all of it, I'm here for all of it. And I am not unfazed, but I'm comfortable in the space where things are unpredictable, and I'm willing to walk into the unknown with vulnerability, with peace, and with strength. That's what warrior mentality stuff is for me.
Appreciate that great definition, and all along those lines, I definitely appreciate your being on. And like I said, hopefully you'll make a return trip and everything like that. Karen, one of the things we were talking about at the early part before the rest of you came on and everything, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, is the notion of the imposter syndrome, or that inner demon, and all along those lines. Because I know sometimes we can very much regret the whole notion of even having the courage to say no and or yes and everything like that, but we can also sometimes be self-defeating of ourselves. That's what I was talking to Amir about at the beginning, because I know that in both relationships and in jobs, I have literally stepped away from opportunity because of having that whole inner conversation with myself and everything. So I was wondering how you dealt with that, because I'm sure that even as you decided to become a filmmaker at 50 and everything, or in your 50s, there were probably times that you were going like, and your friends were probably going like, there is no way that you should be doing this at 50. There's no way that you're going to become the next Tyler Perry or George Lucas or some of the other great filmmakers of our time and everything. So I'm sure that you're getting it both from your own brain as well as externally. So how did you deal with those kind of voices that you were hearing, whether that was your own voice in your own head or voices from others?
A good question. When I was Amir's age, I didn't have that kind of confidence. I had emotional dependency issues. I was going through a divorce with 2 little boys. I was a wreck. I really didn't have that sense of inner strength and confidence. So that was something that by the time I was 50, I had, that I didn't have when I was 30. So, I'm here at 70 saying it's not too late. It's what's in you. What have you always wanted to do? What did you love when you were 5 and 6 and considered a creative genius? And what have you, wanted to do? You spent your career, you've built a career, you raised a family. How about now? Do you have more time to look at those inner desires and hearts? And as I was describing my faith, which my husband, who I met in church. This my second husband. We've been married 33 years. We met in church. The first one I met in a bar. The second one I met in church. I recommend the second way better. Okay, that's my joke. But we've had this journey together. He never expected to be a husband and a father because he had been in the homosexual lifestyle, and he came to Christ at 38 and changed his whole world. So we've had an adventure together. We became friends. I was going through divorce. He was overcoming drug addiction and everything else, early childhood abuse. I mean, that's been probably one of the biggest factors of our marriage was, he had become a dissociator because his abuse was when he was very little. And, he had forgotten it, he had put it away in his soul, but it was still there. And so watching him really move into being the person he was always created to be. And, it wasn't something that he had ever chosen. Yeah. And watching him go through healing and restoration and us getting closer and closer, having our own children, seeing what an amazing father he is, that he would have never had the chance to be. Now, none of this is politically correct. And I understand this is not a road everybody wants, but this was his heart. And getting over the things that happened to him as a child, we became ministers working with people 2-on-1 who also didn't want, these were unwanted, either sexual addictions, sexual abuse issues, unwanted same-sex attractions or other addictions. So it's not exactly very religious topics. These are the kind of things you get kicked out of church for talking about. But, we just have seen so many lives changed into getting freedom from these things that are always based on childhood issues. So, that's been quite an adventure, and I love hearing people's stories of what they've overcome. And it's beautiful when we see what being 50 is nothing in the scheme of things, being 70, I'm just like, 70 used to be old. I don't feel old, I feel like I just have been an entrepreneur for 3 years, just been online since COVID. So this is all, been a steep leaning curve. Maybe Dr. Sandra can attest to that too. Just because we're older doesn't mean we can't still learn things, that we can't still be an influence. We're not in a culture that's necessarily respected older people like some other cultures. Even my husband has Native American, like you do. He also has an African. I have a grandmother whose ancestry was Moors, so they're from Africa too. So we're the great American melting pot, right? We all have kind of like mixtures. But my husband very much has identified with a lot of the Native American culture and aspects of that world, and gets a lot of comfort out of things that you talk about ancestors. Well, he didn't even know they were there, but he identified with them. And as he discovers them, it's really been very freeing, and it brings so much understanding, that connection to the past, the present, the future. And, the future is looking good, folks. And we just have so much more to live for, and to, help change people's lives and see them be their best selves.
I definitely agree with you on that and everything. Oliver, I know one of the things that we've talked about in the past, and I was just curious to hear your thoughts about it and everything, because like I said, we've definitely had the ladies and myself dominated and everything, but a lot of the conversation has been going on for years, and we'll see what Robert Kennedy does with it, and it's part of your own journey and everything, is what we can do to live better and to do better health-wise and all along those lines. I know that's part of your passion, is the health of people in the general and everything. So I just wanted your take on that, because I know that I'm not the only one that orders DoorDash and grew up with more DoorDash than anything else, way too much, or stops at the restaurants and all along those lines. So what can we do to do better in our exercise and our nutrition journey? Oliver, can you hear me?
Yeah, so the message that I can give is that, I can hear you. So what I can say is that in our culture, we've been told that when we grow older, we necessarily have to be sick. But what I've been able to see in my experience is not true, because like I said, before 2016, I was suffering from a lot of chronic diseases. I was suffering from high blood pressure, I had massive headaches every day or every other day. And in fact, I had to have some painkillers in my wallet all the time because of that. I had dandruff, chest pain, back pain, abscesses, joint pain, and a lot of dental problems because I developed a very bad eating habit. Even at midnight, I would have my bottle of Coca-Cola with some biscuits, some cake. I was suffering from a lot of chronic diseases. And at my heaviest, I was 220 pounds. And just in 2016, I went to my doctor, and he told me that I would be on medication for the rest of my life. And at that time, even though I didn't know what I know now, but I said no, I refused to get on medication. So I was completely lost. I didn't know what to do. And just out of the blue, I was just watching one day a program on YouTube, and there was an Indian yogi who suggested that by stopping eating animal product, it was possible to reverse 70% of the chronic diseases. And because my health was pretty bad, I said, okay, I'm going to try that. So it was a Wednesday that I watched the program. On Thursday, I came back from work and I had my last meal of meat. And on Friday, I went cold turkey. And just by doing that, after 4 months, I was able to reverse my blood pressure. So I don't suffer from blood pressure anymore. And after 9 months, I was able to lose 77 pounds. And all my chronic disease completely disappeared. And for the past 8 years, I've not been sick a single day, not even a headache or something like that. And for the past 9 years, I've not taken a single pill. And I've also been able to really slow down my aging process, because a lot of people, when they see me, they think that I am in my late 20s, but I'm actually 54. And so that's how I've been able to do. And the message that I would like to give people is that it's possible to live a disease-free life. We don't have to be sick. Being sick is a choice. So if you start eating the food biologically designed for the human mechanism, you start having positive emotions most of the time. You start thinking positively, and you start controlling what you put on your skin, on your hair. There's no reason why people need to be sick. And that's really the message of positivity that I would like to give to people.
I appreciate that and everything. Hey, Oliver, along those same lines, one of the things that I've mentioned a couple of things that I admire my dad about and everything, but he has been very active in the exercise lane, and he is, mom just turned 82, so dad's 2 years older, so he's 84 and all along those lines. And I remember that he is, right now he just recently had some heart surgery because he's had a couple of times he's had to deal with his pacemaker and other things, but he is still very active and is now in the process of getting to go into cardio and hopefully get back to his swimming, which he loves dearly, and a lot of other things is lady love, because my parents have been divorced for a couple of decades and everything, but his lady love that he's been together with for about more than 2 decades and everything is a dancer by trade, kind of what you were talking about, Karen. She's a dancer and believes that we can dance well into our older ages, because I want to say that Dr. Bellens is in her mid-70s, somewhere between mid to late 70s, and she's still out there doing dance performances and all along those lines. So I sometimes think that we as Western citizens particularly, but just in general, have this notion that we have to stop exercising at a certain age, and I think that that is a bad mistake that a lot of us make and everything. But I just wanted your take on that, because I sometimes think that we think that after 80 we're supposed to stop doing some of the physical fitness things that can help in our health journey, in addition to the better food and all along those lines. Because as I mentioned to Amira when she was on, I think it was before the pandemic, but there is a lake not that far from here that I used to walk around, and I'm going to try to get back into the habit of walking around that again. And we have a famous botanical garden that is near here called Duke Gardens, and I'm going to try to get back to walking around that and everything, because just looking at that beauty, but also getting that exercise probably was helping me during that time, and it would probably help me again, because definitely it's something I just think that we don't do enough of. But I just wanted your take, Dr. Oliver. Is something we should do more of this exercising and nature walks?
So doing the exercise and all that, it's very, very important, because when we exercise, and when I say people need to exercise, they don't necessarily have to join the gym or something like that. They can do jogging, light jogging, biking, and stuff like that. Because when we exercise, when we look at our blood are pumped with the heart, so the heart can pump the blood. But when we look at our lymphatic system, there's no pump. So to be able to, for the lymphatic system, which is the sewage system, to make it work, we need to exercise we need to be moving, and that's what people need to do. And when you people become very sedentary and stuff like that, it will create a lot and a lot of chronic diseases. And when we look, we will see that when we are in movement, then our body will be able to get rid of toxins, and will be able to have a very strong immune system. So it's very, very important to put exercise into our routine. And it's really, really sad that we see a lot of people now, they just stay at home, even for to go to the shopping, they will have the food delivered at home. And this is very, very bad. People need to be moving all the time, because if you don't do that, basically you will start aging very quickly, and it's going to be very bad. And for me, for example, every morning when I wake up, I have to do some stretching exercise, lift a little bit of weight, and every Sunday I will go for a walk. I will go for a 2-hour walk, and this is very, very important for the body. So I will really, really encourage people to not be sedentary, to always go for a walk and stuff like that. And it will be even better, for example, to do at least 30 minutes for 3 days every week. And at that time, we'll be able to have a very strong immune system. And what is also important is to expose yourself to the sunlight, because with sunlight we get vitamin D, which is very, very important. And vitamin D control over 2,500 genes in our bodies. So this is very, very important. And as well, when we go outside, we breathe fresh air and stuff like that, because in our homes it's very toxic because of the cleaning product, the electromagnetic frequencies, the Wi-Fi, the electrical devices. All these are not conducive to good health. So it will be very, very good to go outside, have a walk, do some biking, be in contact with nature, and have some sunlight. So this is something that people need really to do to be in good health.
Yeah, just really quickly, Oliver, and then I'm going to hear from Sandra as well. And we still got about another 10, 15 minutes, and we'll wrap up the whole show and everything. But one thing I was curious about is, and I know a lot of people were anxious with what happened with the elections and everything. So I know I was one of those that was guilty of not getting enough sleep. And I know that even with my work, and it's something that entrepreneurs in general are notoriously bad at and everything. So how important is it for us to get the necessary amount of sleep? And I've heard some people suggest as much as 5 hours, but I've heard some people say you can get by with less depending on your body chemistry and your age and a number of other factors. But I do sometimes feel that particularly those of us that are in the entrepreneurial space, we're so go that we sometimes miss that very important element, because we do have to slow down and rest our bodies and stop the human engine and all along those lines. But Oliver, how would you say we're doing in terms of sleep, and are we getting enough sleep as a society?
Yes, for the sleep, for me personally, what I've been able to uncover is that when you look at people, or you look in the medical literature and stuff, people say that you need to have 8 hours of sleep. But for me, what I've been able to notice is depends on what you eat. For example, for me, 98% of what I eat is raw. I only eat 2% of cooked food. And when you look at the when we eat, 80% of the energy goes to digest the food. And when you eat mostly raw, your body will not have to spend a lot of energy to digest the food. And as well, what I do is that I do intermittent fasting. My last meal is always around 6 p.m. So I go to sleep on an empty stomach. So when I go to sleep, my body doesn't have to do a lot of work. And that's why, for example, for me, with 6 hours of sleep, that's enough. So basically, it depends on what you eat. If you eat a lot of animal product, you eat a lot of dairy product, you eat a lot of processed food, then your sleep quota will be more, because your body will have to work very hard to be able to get rid of toxins. And especially, for example, when you eat animal product, what's happened is that when you look at the bowel transit time, when you eat, for example, a piece of fruit, it will take 3 to 4 hours to pass through our system. If you eat raw vegetables, it will take around 12 hours to pass through our system. When you eat cooked vegetables, it will take between 24 and 30 hours to pass through our system. But when you eat meat, fish, or chicken, it takes 72 hours or 3 days to pass through our system. So meat passes through the system very slowly. That's why you will see that carnivores have got very short intestines. Fruit and vegetables pass through the system very quickly. That's why human beings and herbivores have got a very long intestine. And when, for example, if you take a piece of meat and you leave that outside for 3 days during the summer, when you come back after 3 days, you will see that piece of meat will be in a rotting state. You will see maggot, you will see flies, and it's going to stink. And when you look at the internal temperature of a human being, it's 98 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot. So when we eat animal product, the same rotting process that happens outside, it's exactly what is going to happen inside our gut. This meat will start rotting in our system. And that's why this rotting activity will create, basically that rotting will create a high bacterial activity. So our body will have to produce loads and loads of energy to try and reduce that number of bacteria. And that's why you will see a lot of people are always tired. They will go to sleep at night. They will wake up in the morning and they will still want to sleep. They will have a cup of coffee or some energy drink. So when you eat a lot of animal product, yes, you will have to sleep a lot because of this bacterial activity. So that's what I would say. So it really depends on the way you eat. If you eat more vegetables, fruit, legumes, grain, nuts, and seed, you eat more raw food, then your sleep quota will be less than someone who eats a lot of animal product, a lot of dairy product, or a lot of processed food. So that's what my take is on that.
I appreciate that and everything. Sandra, just really quickly, I said we get ready to wrap up very shortly and everything along those lines. But one of the things that everybody, including Amira, when she was on, was talking about and everything wasn't so much just resilience, but positivity. And I do think that a lot of people are walking around with a lot of negative thoughts. I think you came up with that figure and everything. And I sometimes wonder, how can we work to improve that mindset and to get people thinking more positively and not worrying so much about what's going on in society that might be out of our control and all along those lines. So I just wanted your take on what we can do to try to encourage people to think more positively no matter what they are facing. Because I do think that a lot of times people are worried about things, not just the political landscape, but their bills and the price of groceries, their rent, a number of other things that people are oftentimes spending a lot of times worrying about. So what advice would you give people to get them away from those negative kind of thoughts?
I believe the mindset is very important. And I was thinking about the scripture. Now I'm a Christian and you were touching on that for a bit about being a Christian and religion. And I don't believe that the religious aspect is where we are. I believe that the relationship part with our Lord and Savior is what's most important. He desires to have a bond and a communication with us, just like you have with your children, or just like you have with your parents, or like you have with your teacher or your professor. He wants us to have that communication with him. And Jesus Christ is the most important thing to me. And I have to speak exactly for myself. I received Christ at the age of 9 years old. I was baptized in Jesus' name at the age of 5 years old. And I could not hardly wait to receive him in my life. And he's been a faithful entity in my life ever since. And so to answer your question, I believe in the scripture, Philippians 4, verses 8 and 9. It says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report. If there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. How do you get a person to be trained to think on the positive things? You must train yourself through the word of God. He speaks clearly to us and he tells us, I don't want you to worry. I don't want you to fret. He says, be not weary in well doing, for in due season you'll reap if you faint not. He tells us, to cast all of our cares upon him, for he cares for us. He tells us that I am a safe place for you. And so if we would just take him at his word, we won't have to worry. We won't have to go through depression. We won't have to, be in those moments of negative thinking. Negative thinking it eats away at the core of a person. If you ever walked in a room and heard a conversation with the person and they're all negative, what are you sitting there saying in your mind? Man, I wish they would stop. It has to be something better, you know. And so I'm an optimist, and I wake up in the morning with the optimistic spirit because I trust and believe in the living God. When I lie down at night, I think it's most advantageous for a person before they close their eyes. I want you to say something positive to yourself. These problems will not remain the same. God is working on my situation right now. Make a vision board, create a vision board of your future. And these are things that I have done. And so I speak from example. My experience with Jesus Christ is through the example. He healed my body when I was sick. I have a living testimony that he is real. He's alive. He's well. He functions in my life every day. I went through cancer. I could have been dead with the statistics of people, but he left me here for a purpose and a reason. So I have to think, positive thoughts because he put that in me, And so when I wake up in the morning, I put a sign on my wall, thankful. I think having a positive thought starts with gratitude. A lot of people don't have that term, gratitude, in their vocabulary. I'm grateful for everything, the small things, the large things. I tell him thank you like multiple times a day because I'm grateful. I realize I could have been dead. How many people went through chemo and lived? How many people went through radiation and lived? How many people were diagnosed? And just for the simple fact of fear. Fear has torment, and therefore they didn't have a great outcome. I speak through experience that Jesus is real. And I advise anyone that, because I think we're raised in an environment of negativity. A lot of people are in your home structure. You hear your mom speaking negative. We're never going to have anything. Daddy won't go to work. There's not enough food. There's not enough of this and there's not enough of that. But positive thinking says tomorrow is going to be a great day. Things will get better. And so it starts small and then you'll find yourself. I tell people to every time you think of speaking a negative thought, stop in the middle of it. Don't execute it. Stop directly in the middle of that negative thought and counteract it with the positive thought. And then it will be a habitual thing where you would speak nothing but positive. I'm going to end right here. There's a video on YouTube and it talks about the term good, the word good. It says, if someone comes to you talking negative, just say good, 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 good. And you're saying good when they're telling you their mother just died? Or you're saying good, they tell you they got in an accident? Yeah, good, good, good. And the more you say good, the negative goes out of the window. You have to counteract negativity with positivity. And that's how you will be ecstatic to be alive. You can find me on my website. Everything that I do is on Journey into Purpose, LLC.com. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak.
No problem at all. And definitely, like I said, give it a wrap up and everything. But I was going to add a couple of things that you said. I love that idea of saying good and everything. And I think all of y'all are joined because I actually started a little bit earlier than I sometimes start because of her own schedule and everything along those lines. But what I think y'all missed because she had already done part of the interview before y'all got there. But just to share this part of the story, and I don't think she'd mind because you brought it up on the show. Amira, the young lady that was on the show, actually survived a brain surgery and was told that she had a 1% chance of living. So that was actually the young lady that was on the show, and she actually talked about that before y'all came on. That she was actually having neurosurgeons that were telling her that she did not stand a chance, but she had this kind of like positive attitude. Maybe I don't know if necessarily that she would say it was based in Christianity, but definitely based on spirituality, that she was going to survive no matter what the doctors told her and all along those lines. So she definitely talked about that earlier on the show and everything. And one of the things that I said to you, Sandra, is that my dad, who I mentioned earlier, and I have a great deal of admiration for him, just like I have a great deal of admiration for my mom and everything, but he did an artwork, and it was a piece called Thoughts and Prayers, because one of the things that he got frustrated by, and a lot of people giving him thoughts and prayers this last time that he did surgery, is I think there's this notion of thoughts and prayers without action and everything. So that's what he was frustrated by, when people would give thoughts and prayers during that disaster time and not be trying to come up with ways to bring some solution to it. And that's
Yeah,
why that particular art piece, because I do think that there are a lot of people that give it lip service and don't necessarily do the action that can come behind it. So
exactly.
it can be powerful to send things to Jesus, but even Jesus and Christianity and the religion in general wants us to do something to help these things happen. In my mind, I could be wrong, but that's kind of my philosophy. And all in that line is that he wants us to have some action with it. So, like I said, I think that's why Dad created that particular piece and everything in that way.
That's
This,
funny you said that because I'm writing a book right now and it's right in front of me and it's talking about positive thoughts. And I start with the first verse that says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Philippians 4:13. And so we do have thoughts and we're allowed to have free reign with our thoughts. But sometimes we have to bring our thoughts back into subjection. All right. Because our thoughts could deter us from where we're trying to go. And if we want to stay focused, we must align our thoughts in the direction of where we're trying to go. So, yeah, thank you so much.
no problem. Karen, what's your take on that and everything? 'Cause like I said, I know we're wrapping up with just your philosophies in life in general and everything like that. I'm hearing very like-minded thoughts between everybody, including Amira when she was here, just in the power of being connected and all along those
Yeah.
lines. So one thing that
Well,
I was
this has been wonderful. What a treat to meet such wonderful people. And Olivia, you were talking about, going outside, and one of the things that I have a three-part pop-up podcast I give away, getcreativewithkaren.com, and on it I talk about taking a stroll, not a Fitbit count your steps kind of walk, which is good for your body, but this is a stroll where you notice your surroundings, you're in the moment, you're noticing the sky, you're noticing the leaves, listening to the birds tweeting, or just noticing your neighbors, whatever is around you. Maybe you take your journal, maybe you take your sketchbook, but in that time you are really engaging in the moment, and that does connect left brain, right brain, makes you your most brilliant self. And when you do that, you are actually helping to bring healing and wellness to your soul. I like Philippians 4 and even the first two verses. Fret, I do not fret. I use it as a declaration. I do not fret, and I'm anxious for nothing, but in everything through prayer with thanksgiving. Make lean on and trust in God. So it's a beautiful connection we've all had, and I feel like that theme of taking time outside, and when we're online all the time, or digitally, we need to take breaks. They say even every 90 minutes to 2 hours, take a break, take a walk, take a stroll. I'm a bike rider, so I ride my bikes, and I pray, for my neighbors and everything, and notice the sky. So I just thank you for this opportunity to share.
No problem. Glad to do that. Just really quickly, before I get to that question that I get for everybody, and y'all kind of alluded to it in everything as we were wrapping up everything, but just really quickly, and this is for all three of you, how important do you think it is to listen and learn? Because that is something that I'll get frustrated by, because I think some people are so stuck in their ways, for lack of a better term, and I am one of those people that believes in listening and learning, even sometimes listening and learning from people that I may not always agree with and everything, because I've even had people on this show and other shows that have been part of like different philosophies of the show. I had a special guest, and I definitely did not necessarily agree with everything that he said, but I had a guest on a special edition of this show. They literally thought the world was flat, and I wasn't going to argue with him whether he was right or wrong. I was just going to listen to his opinion as to why he thought the world was flat and all along those lines. So I'm a big believer of listening, and I know that they say that unfortunately we live in a society where divorce and breakups, including family breakups, are very high, and I sometimes think that's because we don't do enough listening and forgiving of each other and all along those lines, because you can listen, but you also have to forgive the person's view if it might not be the same as your view and everything. But that's just my take. I was wondering y'all's take and everything. So I'll start with you, Karen, but also hear from Sandra and Oliver as well. So as I'll start with the two of you, because y'all are mothers. I'm only an uncle, but as mothers, how important is that listening aspect of what's going on even with your kids and everything?
Yeah, it's huge. They say you have two ears, only one mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you talk. I'm guilty. I admit it. I'm guilty. I'm a talker. I think we women have more words, and we just need to express them more. So, I mean, it's definitely something I've had to learn how to do better. And I confess that listening is really, really important. As a teacher, I'm a lifelong learner. I get to write a textbook for my college students who are more rural, for them with 1,800 images. So even if they don't read the book, they'll at least see the pictures and enjoy art history and appreciate it better. So I love to learn, and listening is part of learning. So I've learned something today with this very, very well informed group. So thank you very much. Thank you for the privilege of being here.
No problem. How important is listening and forgiveness to you, Sandra? Then I want to hear from Oliver, and then I'll ask that question to wrap us all up, and we'll go with the commercial after that to end the whole
All
show.
right. Listening is imperative because while you're in the mode of listening, you're in a mode and have the ability to learn something. All right. A lot of people don't like to listen because it's all about them. You'll find people talking and talking and talking because they think they're so important. But if you listen, you will hear the cry of someone else. You will hear an important lesson that you need to learn. You will hear an urgency because most people that they're trying to get something apart, they're saying, I need to be heard. There's something going wrong. Help me fix it. And it's a cry when someone is talking. And so if we look at it like that, then we will be, forgiveness is everything. It empties out the heart, the mind, and the spirit. It clears and gives you a clear path and an avenue for your future. When you cannot listen and you cannot forgive, you are blocked, you are stuck, and you're not in a healthy, aligned element.
I agree with you on that. Oliver, how important is listening to you, both listening to your body as well as just listening to other people as well?
Yeah, I think it's very, very important to be able to listen. Just like Karen said, that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So basically, it means that we need to pay more attention to what other people are saying. And when you pay more attention, you can learn a lot and a lot and a lot instead of just arguing and trying to prove a point. So I think it's very, very important to be able to listen and to learn. And when you are listening, there's a lot of stuff that you can learn from that. So I think it's very, very important for me to just do that.
Yeah, and Sandra bounce off of it. She may come back as we wrap up, but if not, she definitely brought up a lot of her things. And like I said, we're going to wrap up anyway. Just really quickly, one of the things I know religious people talk about, and she's coming back, so I'll bring her back as well and everything. But I know a lot of religious people talk about this notion, and it comes back to listening. How important, because I know a lot of people that are more in tune to their Christian beliefs and their religious beliefs than even I would claim to be, and even their spiritual beliefs, talk about this notion of discernment and everything. And I sometimes think that we know the bad people in our lives and those people that are quote unquote users, even in relationships, oftentimes before we are willing to admit that we see it. I mean, within one of the things that a lot of times people say in relationships is that they knew the person was bad for them before they get out of it, and all along those lines, because they recognize the signs, but they don't necessarily pay attention to the signs, or they choose to intentionally ignore the signs. So I do know that a lot of the spiritual and religious people talk about that notion of discernment. So do you think that we all have that notion, and should we all try to fine tune that ability to understand where people are coming from? Karen, and then Sandra, and Oliver's got an answer to that as well.
I have to admit that discernment was never my strong suit. I was strongly developed because I wasn't a very spiritual person. For a long time, I was kind of spiritually dead. I was searching, but I didn't know. And I've just always been easy to be deceived. I kind of am a believer. And so I don't lie to people, so I don't expect them to lie to me. And it's always a surprise when they do, or cheat or steal. I'm still shocked when they do, because I wouldn't do that to them. We've always had people stay with us because sometimes getting over stuff meant kind of reparenting. And my kids joke about it all the time now that they're grown, how they always grew up. You didn't ever know who was going to be on the couch or, in the spare bedroom, because they just needed more help than a few hours of talking. They needed the kind of love a family could offer. So for me, discernment is something that I've really had to pull on God to develop. and to get that discernment, I've had to rely on Holy Spirit to help me. One of my children is very developed. They have always had a very strong sense of discernment. They can tell whether something's good or bad very quickly, and it has served him well in a lot of ways. Although it's easy for them to become skeptics, and not trust people, whereas I tend to be way more open to that. And God has been good to protect me and mine because of my not very well defined gift of discernment.
Quickly, what's your take on that, Sandra, and everything? Because one of the things that I feel that I am blessed in the ability to do, and I've even said it with some of my past relationships and everything, is I feel that I am. There's this saying about relationships that the people that they may be in your life for a season, a reason, and I forgot what the third one is and everything like that. But I have always had the gift to know people that will be in my life for a long period of time. I'm not always correct as to the nature of what they will be in there for. So I have definitely misread that, where I might have thought that they were going to be the soulmate, and I know that soulmate can be a loaded term, because soulmate doesn't necessarily always mean husband and wife and everything, or them, and I might misread that and everything. But I have been fairly accurate in knowing the people that would be in my life for a extended period of time, if not for the duration of life and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on this whole notion of discernment.
Well, that's good that you had that quality all your life. Well, Maya Angelou said, when a person show you who they are, believe them. And sometimes people, they're showing us and we're ignoring all of the signs. Well, I am grateful that I have always had discernment, and I could pick up on things a mile away, and it comes through I think mine comes through generations, because my parents were pastors. And so I think I was, tutelaged through that. And so I can pick it up. I don't care where you're from. I cherish my discernment, so I do not ignore it. And when I feel something, I comply. I try my best to comply. Now, since we're a human, we may not always make it, and so we do make those mistakes. But what I say to that is, if you make a mistake and ignore it, get back up and do it again. Don't just allow it to take, over your life. And so I cherish discernment. It comes for a reason, because it is a protector. It's a protector for you. It's like your conscience, let your conscience be your guide. It is God saying to you, beware, there's something going awry. It's God saying, open your eyes and look. My mother used to say, look further than off the tip of your nose, because there's danger out there. And so discernment comes to warn, and the Holy Ghost comes to lead and to guide and to show you into all truth. And so the opposite of discernment would be the untruth part, right? And so you were talking about the presidential election, and I'm guilty of that too, and my daughter, she's in college, she texts me, she said, I'm so sad. And I had to encourage her. I said, don't be sad, it's all right. I said, because God knew it was going to happen. I said, I had to get over it too, because you have to make yourself relatable to others, right? I had a difficult time as well, but now I'm over it, because I know God is still in control, and he's going to make all things well. He's going to protect the children of God, right? And so, discernment comes to lead us and guide us into all truth. And so I just warn you, when it comes, pay attention.
Yeah, that's very true. And one of the things that I know sometimes people say that they do, that I sometimes worry when they say that it comes to that whole notion of discernment, because I've had some friends that have had other acquaintances that have been toxic, for lack of a better term. And what's that old saying, that they keep their enemies close, but they're your friends close, but they're
keep your enemies close, but keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Right, but your friends close, but your enemies closer. So I have heard people that say that they know some of the toxic people in their life, but they kind of like handle them with a long stick away. My mother said it too. She said, handle them with a long handle spoon, and you have to do that, because toxicity kills. It's like a cancer, and so Yep, very true. Oliver, what's your take on discernment and just being able to recognize that notion of who is good or bad in your life and everything, and maybe even taking it from a spiritual standpoint, because I know different cultures take it differently as well and everything. But what is your take on that? And then, like I said, I'll wrap up everything after Oliver answers and everything. But what is your take on the notion of how you are able to discern who's going to be good for you?
Yeah, so for me, before my transformation, before 2016, I was a little bit naive. I didn't know all these things. But what I've noticed is that since changing my way of eating, since eating a plant-based nutrition, I'm starting to vibrate at a higher level of frequency. And now I'm able really to to discern stuff. So I've developed intuition and stuff like that. So now I'm really, really in tune with myself. And sometimes, or a lot of time, when something is happening, I will know. Maybe some people can be next to me or online or something. I can know, for example, the intention and stuff like that. So now I'm really, really good at being able to discern. So that's my take on it.
I appreciate it and everything. Like I said, it's been a fun show, and like I told Amira, I hope that the three of you will make a return trip as well, because there are people that have been made return trips. Because as I said when I first created the show, and I've been doing it now for about 3 or 4 years, the notion is kind of like what I imagined a dinner party would be if I lived in a house versus the apartment that I live in and everything. And it's somewhat based on, ironically, I think you were talking about your family, Karen, and everything. But when my parents had that radio station in rural North Carolina that they created because they were frustrated that they were not hearing jazz and blues and not hearing enough voices of other people and all along those lines. So they decided to create a rural jazz radio station in rural North Carolina and everything that was not associated. As you know, many of those kind of stations are associated with colleges and universities, but it was truly a true community radio station and everything. But they would sometimes play bidwits with some of their family friends, and they would be having these kind of conversations where they might be discussing their raising of the kids, which would be me and my brother and whatever kids their folks had and their friends had and everything, but also the politics of the day, the sports of the day, and of course a lot of trash talking as well and everything. So when that happened, I was like, well, with that in my mind, I was like, well, if I had a house, a significant other, and a bigger house, and I invited a bunch of friends in, and they came in and out in that kind of nature, and having watched TV shows where that was a regular kind of focus and everything, whether that was the Cosby Show or the Brady Bunch or a number of others, I was like, well, it would be like an online dinner party. So that's what I created this show as, and it's a way for people to meet each other, but also learn from each other. And as you've been learning, learn lessons from each other's life lessons and life lessons learned and all along those lines. So that being said, that's why I created it, and hopefully it'll go for another 4, maybe even 40 years, depending on how long I've got on the planet and all along those lines. But I love doing this show, and I always find it is an engaging conversation and all along those lines. So I'm gonna go round robin, but I'll start with the gentleman, since I know his mic sometimes is a little bit rockier and everything, and I'll go to Oliver, then Sandra, and close out with Karen, and then after that we'll do some commercials. So kind of like what I did with Amira. If there's anything that you have not said that you wanted to say, this is a time to share that, how you can be reached, and any message of positivity that you would like to share. So I'll start with you, Oliver.
Yeah, so what I would like the message, the positivity that I would like to give people is that people need to understand that when we are born on this earth, the most important thing that we have, it's our body, it's our temple, and we've only got one. So this body will be with us for the rest of our lives. So we need to do whatever we have to do to keep it in good health so that we can have a longer and fruitful life, because we would like, obviously, to be around to see our kids, our grandkids getting married and stuff like that. And to be able to do that, we need to be we need to have optimal health, and we can create optimal health by the food that we eat, the thought that we entertain in our mind most of the time, and the stuff that we put on our skin and on our hair. And if we do that, we'll be able to really, really live a longer and fruitful life. And if people would like to get in touch with me, first of all, I've got my book, which is on sale on Amazon, which is the Plant-Based Nutrition, How It's Going to Change Your Life. It's available on Amazon, or people can reach me at my website, which is oliviermankondo.com. That's oliviermankondo.com, and over there they will be able to see all my work. And if people would like to work with me to lose weight and to be able to live a disease-free life, they can still go on my website, and they will be able to book a discovery call with me. So that's all I can say for now. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be on your show and to share my story. Thank you.
No problem. Glad to do that and everything. And one of the things I was just going to add really quickly is I've got a couple of friends in that line and everything that have been on various diet plans. I've got one friend that is part of the, he had a church at one point, Holy Tabernacle, and he's also got one of those bounce houses. And I want to say that he has said that he has never had a cold or any sort of disease, even during the pandemic, because of the life choices that he made and some of the diet choices that he made. So I want to say that he said that he has gone for, I want to say, close to 10 or 15 years without even having the sniffles, much less any other kind of thing based on his diet and all along those lines. So the diet can impact our physical health as well as our mental health. And I think that that's something that Damien has told me on a regular basis. Damien Bynum is the one that has told me that I saw him not that long ago. And I remember him sharing, because I asked him, I said, well, did you get a cold during this the time that we were having difficult times and all along those lines? So he did said that he has still not had one. And like I said, I think it's been now for multiple decades, because I think he changed his lifestyle probably about 20 or 25 years ago, if I'm remembering his story correctly, and all in that space. Before I get to you, Sandra, I was going to tease you and everything. The one thing that I've joked about on this show, and I've joked about it on others, is I am a big believer in mindset and everything. So I have said that even though I am 62, that I am hoping to get to 200, even though unless it's on those Bible people, nobody has actually made it to 200 and all along those lines. And I don't have any kids and everything along those lines. So maybe that'll be helpful. But, a lot of times when you watch the centurions, they're usually doing things that are opposite of what we're supposed to do in terms of like drinking and smoking and eating bad foods and all along those lines. And I have, and I'm just kind of like telling myself, I have also sometimes more than less recently flirted with some young ladies and everything. So I'm going like, that might actually kill me, not help me and everything, because if they're 30 or 40 and everything and they decide they want a kid, I don't know if they're ready to be a father at 80 or something like that, and all along those lines. So that might actually drive me to the very quicker than not, or it might actually make me younger. Who the heck knows? Only time would tell.
All the thoughts you're having.
Yes, that's why I was sharing that.
Well, my positive message to the audience will be, there is no pain that cannot be healed. You may be going through a divorce. You may have lost your family. You may have lost your parents. But I am the shiftologist that you have been looking for to carry you from where you are right now to the place where you want to be. I am also, the Lord gave me a project for the prisons. Mm-hmm. Where will you be on Christmas? Mm-hmm. Having fun with your family and your friends? Where would prisoners be, inmates be? He gave me an idea to present to them my, for the women, my health and wellness journal. For the men, my tidbits of wisdom daily devotional. And I want to give 100 of those items to those inmates. And that's what's on my heart right now. And that's the passion and the drive that I'm working for. So we're going to wrap them up and we're going to drive them to Pendleton Correctional Facility. And we're going to present them to the inmates, because that's giving back. That's ministry. That's thinking about something bigger than yourself. That's doing God's work. And that's giving them hope and a message. Because can you imagine what it is every day to be locked up in a cell? Come on. We have our freedom. We have our liberty. We have choices that we can make, but they can't. And so if anybody in the audience want to donate any of the journals or any of the devotionals, please reach me. And you can reach me at my website, Journey into Purpose. I help people journey into their purposes. All right. So it's journeyintopurposellc.com. You can leave me an email. You can call me. My number is on there. Or you can even send each book is $30. My Cash App is Journey into Purpose. So it's $ Journey into Purpose. And we would love as many committed people as possible. And we need to order them right away because Amazon takes a long time. I have a plethora of books. All of my books are on Amazon. You can type in the search bar, Sandra E. Jackson. I have a children's book that I am so geeked about. All right. My first children's book, and it is called Who Am I? I Am Confident. All right. It has affirmations, it has declarations, it has beautiful pictures. You can teach it to the daycare children. You can teach it in your home. You can teach it at school, at the library, anywhere. So, who am I? I am confident. I love you all. May God bless you all.
Appreciate that and everything, and I'm glad you brought up that notion of the prisons, because when my parents had the radio station, we had a program guide, and some of the most heartfelt letters that I remember, and I don't remember the details of them, were from the prison. And I think that there was kind of like what you do, Karen. There were people that brought the theater and other performances into the prison, and I know some other people that have done poetry and other things, because you are right, a lot of times they don't have any way to be reached. And a good friend of mine, Michael Anderson, has a company called Polished Souls, and he was actually in the system. I think he was accused of either murder or assault, but he is out. And his wife, LaWanda Lee, no relation to me, is a minister, and they actually use his experience and a lot to do ministry to get people out of the gangs, because that was gang mentality is what got him into the trouble that he got into, and all along those lines. And a newer friend of mine is actually one of those women that you were talking about, because she was responding to somebody trying to assault her, and I think she assaulted them back, and she wound up serving, I think she told me, somewhere like 3 to 5 years in prison in Louisiana. So yes, there's a lot of times that things that we aren't always at our control can get us into some bad situations.
Yes.
So sometimes it is not always people that are trying to be malicious in what happens. Sometimes it can also be reactions that happen to cause them to get into these bad situations that get them into prison. I personally am one, and I've said this on a couple of platforms, not so much on Pod TV, but I personally think that the judicial system needs some serious reforms. But that's just my thought, because I think that there needs to be some serious reforms on our judicial system and all along that kind of line, because right now it's got some serious injustices in the way that African Americans versus others are treated and everything. So that's just my thing, is that we got to work on some ways to improve it. And part of that is getting the arts in there, because I do want the arts getting into the prison system and all along those lines. But Karen, as we get ready to get out of here, your final thoughts, ways that you can be reached and all along those lines.
Yeah, I'd love for people to get my 3-part Papa podcast to learn more about the healing power of the creative and how to stir up your own creativity with www.getcreativewithkaren.com. You can get to my website, which is karendeloachart.com, and see some of my work and some of my books there. I also have a book on Amazon, How to Draw. I teach drawing, I teach painting, I do workshops and speaking engagements, and belong to a theater and arts group. We do since COVID, we do all video. We haven't been in the theater since COVID. They shut them all down for a long time. Anyway, I just want to leave this one thought for those of you that maybe have that creative thing inside that hasn't been released, to give yourself grace to try something new. We talked earlier about the paralysis of perfectionism, where we want to be good at it right away. And maybe, Olivia, you've had experiences with people like, I can't give up all my meat. You know, how do you get people to have the grace to try something new like that that's life-saving? Well, I say have grace for yourself and create a no criticism zone. Criticism comes from the left brain. It shuts down that sensitive right brain that is our intuitive and our part of our imagination, and our instincts come from our right brain, and even maybe our ability to hear God. So I say, shut that part down, create a safe space where you can try something new. So I'd love to work with anybody that wants to have that done for themselves too, and you can join me. So thank you for this opportunity, Mark. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
No problem. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, I hope that all of you will make a return trip, along with Amira, who was with us earlier, and all along those lines. And I am running some of the banners that Sandra had given us earlier, and all along those lines as we get ready to wrap up and everything in that space. But definitely it was another great show, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And like I said, maybe y'all will come back on another chat like this, because I also enjoy having guests, and I have had some return guests as well. So definitely would love to have both of you back at some point or another, and hopefully we can have that happen in the very near future, because like I said, I love these kind of very authentic conversations. I think we need more of these kind of authentic conversations in general. I think that that's part of the thing are not going well in society is that we're having too many people that are doing non-authentic conversations and aren't being real with each other, and sometimes let their egos get in the way and all in that space. So I think we've got to get out of that and just learn from each other and continue to learn from each other. Because as you said, Sandra, I am also, that's what I was telling people earlier today, is that, yeah, there are a lot of people, my mom included, and others that were feeling sad because of the results. And I know other people that were feeling very gleeful because of the results. But at the end of the day, I'm one of those people that believe that everything will work out the way it's supposed to work out. And we have to believe in that as well. And if there is going to be problems, then we'll find a way out of those problems and everything like that. But I do think that there can be ways that we can bridge this divide, because I do think that the society has sometimes got a little bit too divisive, and that's across a lot of different things, whether that's orientations, whether that's race, whether that's a number of other things. But I think that we can find ways to actually bring that unity that, in my mind, both candidates, even in their own unique ways, said that they want to do. But now the time for talk is done, and it's time to see if they can actually make it an action step instead of just a talking point, because politicians and social people in that realm, I would even say, and I consider myself to be an activist and politicians, and sometimes be very good at making a lot of promises, making a lot of thoughts, but now it's time for the actual actions to create those activities and to create things that will be good for society. So it's time for less time for the talk, and I'm glad that the ads are off. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I was tired of the ads, even of my own side and everything like that. So I'm glad that the ads are starting to fade away and they're gone and everything. And now we'll see what kind of action can be taken to actually bring a better nation, whatever that better nation looks like, and all along those lines. So I'm going to just give people the room to have some optimism. That's what I always believed in, is optimism and positivity. So we'll give them some room to have some optimism, and we'll see what happens. And if it doesn't happen, well, we can always say, we told you so. But hopefully that won't be the case and everything like that. I'm just going to go for the optimism side of things right now. And on that note, I'm going to go out with one of my friends' financial services, which is actually a religious-based one, and also a talk show that actually talks about Babel or Bible, where one of the guys does a show. It's not on the network now, but we may try to get it on the network here at Pod TV. But they bring out a saying from the Bible, and you have to decide whether it's actually from the Bible or whether it's just some old Babel or something along those lines. But Mario still created this show. I want to say he created it during the pandemic and all along those lines. So we'll get out with these commercials and maybe one or two others. But definitely, as I was saying, it's been a fun conversation, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the near future.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Are you looking for money-saving strategies for your business and personal finances? Are you tired of working hard every day with little or nothing to show for it? Contact Prosperity Financial Services, LLC right now for your free financial consultation. Call now to reserve yours today, 804-349-8600, 804-349-8600.
It's time for Bible or Babble. Gather round for your new favorite show. If you little work, show 'em what you know. Let's go. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go. Calling every saint, we gon' put you to the test. See who know that B.I.B. a little best. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go.
Thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.